Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you this morning on Channel 9 on WJOP-LP, Newburyport, FM 96.3. We're also available on Newburyport Community Media's YouTube channel at ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm just delighted to welcome today's guest. Tom Abrams is here. He's social studies teacher at Newburyport High School, and he's the faculty sponsor for the high school's initiative, Invent2Prevent Violence, which will be our topic today. We also have a student, Landyn who is here to talk about her reasons for participating in the program and the plans that her team has come up with. So first of all, Tom, welcome. Thank you so much for visiting the morning show. It's good to see you.
It's a pleasure. I haven't seen you since we did some ADL work about a year ago, pre-COVID.
And that was pre-COVID. It seems like a distant age. So it was a distant age. And Landyn, thank you so much for taking time to visit the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be on.
My pleasure. Well, I was hoping that you could start out by just giving us an overview of Invent2Prevent Violence. What is it? Who sponsors the initiative? And what's the overarching purpose of the initiative? Whoever would like to start, either Landyn or Tom.
Landyn, well, I'll take that one because that's the big boy there. So Invent2Prevent it's an initiative that is sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security, and it's really spearheaded by two organizations, the McCain Institute, named after Senator John McCain, as well as Adventure Partnership, which is an experiential learning nonprofit organization. And we hooked up with them through a local community member, Dave Fortier. I taught his daughter last year in AP language. His daughter is currently in this class. He runs a big organization dealing with kind of preventive violence and healing after violent encounters. So we were offered this opportunity to jump on board, and it's a pretty simple concept. I think we look at a population of kids, peers who would be prone to targeted violence, a vulnerable group of kids who might be prone to something horrific like a school shooting, something like bullying or racist actions. And we try to mitigate that through a social media campaign, or we try to mitigate it through a program that's promoted through social media. And that's the gist of the class. It's all geared towards building that initiative, celebrating it and promoting it through social media, and then hopefully affecting some sort of change in that population of vulnerable kids.
Yeah, such an important and such a timely endeavor, Tom. I think I read in some of the materials, they started out working with college students, but they decided to branch out and work with high school students as well. So could you tell us your understanding of what made them want to dip down into an even younger age group, and how many high schools were selected to participate in the program?
Yeah, they just know that we're much better than college kids.
Of course.
I think it was really the success of the program on the college level. They had about 77 colleges participating last year that were really affecting change. And I think they really wanted more of a grassroots effort. The analogy that I give, is, I'm a pretty much a reading teacher essentially. And I always say, like, I've taught at the college level. I'm like, oh, I got to get them early at high school. And I've taught at the high school level. I'm like, oh, I got to get them early in 8th grade. And we keep going down and down. And I think it's the same idea with this, is to really get kids as young as possible, with those protective factors, so they don't do something that's crazy. Initially they were opening it up to 15 high schools. They eventually expanded it to 25. And from those 25, which is, we were selected to represent at the DHS last week rather.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a lot of schools. And so it strikes me as a real honor for Newburyport High School to be among those chosen to participate in this initiative. And yes, prevention at the earliest possible age seems like a great idea to me. Better to prevent than to have to repair.
Yeah, Mary, we know that even across disciplines, like when you talk about reading, when you talk about the effects of like early childhood education and really the payoff that has in the long term, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so Landyn, I was hoping that you might tell us what made you decide that you wanted to participate in this initiative.
Well, last year I was a student in Dr. Abrams's AP Literature, and he introduced this idea to us at the end of the year, knowing we were seniors and would still be busy with the college process and everything, but it was a really intriguing thing to be a part of, and also just something that you can kind of make a difference and really dig into your community and figure out how can I make this better for future generations, which is really why I wanted to become a part of Invent2Prevent.
And
Well,
Mary, just to hop onto that too, Landyn, these kids are partaking in this class during Clipper Block, so they're adding it on to already a pretty heavy course load for these students. It's kind of an extra class, and it's just a pleasure to work with this group of kids, high performing, engaged, just wonderful kids.
Wonderful.
Speaking of, there's Izzy.
And yes, we've been joined. Welcome. Guido is here. Isabella Guido, thank you so much for joining us, and your timing is perfect because I can now frame to you the question that Landyn really just finished asking, which is, what made you decide that you wanted to participate in Invent2Prevent?
So I just want to make sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So when I first heard about the group, first of all, I really liked that it was like a collaborative type thing. So like the idea that I could work with my peers on a project like this was super cool. And I'm also always looking for ways to try and be like more engaged in my community, and especially like in efforts with kids that are in the similar age group as myself. So I think that's what was really appealing to me about this.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. It's very inspiring to hear about the reasons why you wanted to be part of this really important prevention project. Well, of course, the thing I'm really curious to find out about is what kind of research have you been doing, and what kind of plan or campaign have you come up with, and how did your research lead you to decide that would be a good type of campaign or plan to focus on?
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I would say that we kind of started just, our classes were brainstorms, and we were just kind of trying to find that one idea that kind of clicked with all of us, that we felt could really like solve this problem. So we kind of have two different teams. There's like the analytical side. So we have researchers who are collecting all this data to find an affected part of our community and why this is happening and the demographics behind that. And then also we have a marketing group and a planning group that are working collaboratively to execute basically our findings.
Landyn, how many people are on the team?
We have about 15 students, I believe.
Okay.
So it's a pretty small group of us. And we try really hard to get all of our work done, which it's not always like that in public school. I find that classes are bigger, so it's a really great experience to have this smaller class size.
Yeah, that's a great size. Go ahead, Tom.
Mary, to your question, maybe Izzy can kind of explain some of the, we really use the Newburyport Youth Assets data, and maybe Izzy can kind of dig into some of that data without really revealing, we want to be very careful in talking about the population we identified, because, we don't want to kind of stereotype them. So maybe Izzy can give us some of the data in keeping it a little vague at the same time. We'll challenge her.
Sure, there's a challenge,
sure.
Izzy.
So the data is gathered from students in 6th grade through 12th grade. So it's a pretty like wide range of kids. And the questions start with like their basic backgrounds. So it'll be like their racial or ethnic identities, if they live with their biological parents or a step parent, and kind of like the basics like that, like their specific demographics. And then it opens up more into like their values. So you can rank things on a scale of somewhat important to extremely important. And so there's like a mid-range and there's like the two more like extreme sides of things. So we kind of saw a breakdown of like how kids value various like social aspects of our community. So it would be something like, how important do you feel it is to collaborate with peers who might be different than yourself, or something like that. And I think that helped us kind of, so Landyn and I are actually on the analytical team. So I think that helped us like gauge where the students kind of like mindsets are when we were trying to like zero in on one specific group.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so you had a good data set then to work with. It helped you kind of identify what some of the needs might be, if I'm understanding you, Izzy. And so with that data set and with your analytical abilities, then how did that translate into then a plan or a campaign that you came up with that might address some of the needs that your data set revealed?
It was super messy at first. You know, as part of kind of being on this team, you know, we just started throwing ideas out there. How can we get these kids, as Izzy very eloquently said, you know, we found these kids who are very vulnerable, what they call risk factors. And we had to figure out, how do we mitigate those risks? So what can we come up with as plans? And at first we had, I think, maybe 6 or 7 ideas, very ambitious. And then we started narrowing it down to really see if we can affect change, you know, to counter the negatives. And in the parlance that we use, they're called protective factors. In the community of Newburyport, it's equated to what we call assets from the asset story, very similar ideas. But maybe Landyn or Izzy could talk a little bit more about kind of how we winnowed down that huge bunch of ideas to the 2 that we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think at first we were a little ahead of ourselves, honestly, and thought we could do a lot more than we could. And then we all kind of realized, like, we're going away soon, going to college as all seniors, and we wanted something that could kind of last for classes after us, that they could continue doing as a sort of tradition to eliminate these risk factors and bring our community together, essentially. So I think it was honestly just time. We had to talk it out for sure. And some people were very strong about ideas that weren't necessarily what we all felt fit. So at the end of the day, we just kind of came together and saw what was doable and what could really affect, like, in the moment and in the future. So I think that's how we really decided.
And Mary, one of the beautiful things about this project, you see Landyn talking, you know, it's really that real world application. You know, you're working on a team with 15 people, you disagree. How do you come to a consensus so that you're all moving in the same path? So it was really great to see the students work through that. And as a teacher, knowing 10 years from now, they're going to be in a boardroom somewhere mimicking that same piece. And hopefully they learn, you know, how to navigate some of those relationships and in situations.
It's a hugely important skill to be able to learn, I think. And also doable and sustainable are pretty important criteria to apply. And it sounds like that practically was what you did. So what did you come up with?
Go ahead, Izzy.
Oh, so we came up with, it's kind of like, I don't know if this is the right word to use, but it's like multifaceted, the project itself. So Landyn and I, like, we're part of the analytical team, like I mentioned earlier. So after we kind of fell down that rabbit hole of looking at the asset survey, we then drew out specific like details from that were like, okay, we can apply this to identifying a particular group and seeing how we can like kind of make a change with that, if that makes sense. So I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Abrams, but I think the goal is for us to create our own survey to ask what it's like being a student in Newburyport. Is that still something we're doing? And so that's part of what our team specifically is doing. And then we have a marketing group that's creating, or already has made us Instagram page. And they created a slogan for that as well, which I don't want to say because I don't want to like talk about the group in particular that we chose. But that's kind of to promote it, because obviously most kids this age use social media. So that's a good way to interact with that. And then the last group actually thought of creating an escape room.
Tell me more about that, because I've heard of them, but I've never done one.
I haven't either.
So tell us what an escape room is, if you could start there, please.
So an escape room is like it's usually a smaller room that you're in with a group of people, and the goal is to get out, but there's no like.
So it's a locked room, is he?
Yeah, there's no,
Okay.
exactly. And there's no obvious means of doing so. So you have to like look for little clues and like details within the room to try and get out. So I think the idea with that was it was something that, first of all, is fun and engaging, but also that it could bring a group of kids together and like they work in a way, like talk to kids maybe they wouldn't otherwise in school, something like that.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Go ahead, Landyn. Yeah.
I also think to kind of add into that, we're looking in the escape room to also bring the community together as a whole. I won't say what the theme is, but we're doing it to kind of allow students to kind of realize like where they're from kind of, and see if that can connect them to people as well. We just really want to find a way to unite the community, and let kids like know that there are always people there for them and that there's always someone else that they can meet and talk to.
And Mary, let me just swing back to your first question too. So basically we have two ideas. The first idea, as Izzy said, we're going to run a survey and we're asking students, and we might reach out to community members about a time when they felt uncomfortable, and then what someone did to make them feel comfortable or better. And then we're going to actually post these little anecdotes on panels throughout the school that will also be illustrated with artwork from the National Art Honor Society. Wonderful. And then the second piece is that escape room. And as Landyn and Izzy both said, to kind of bring those groups together. And we're hoping that when they escape, if they escape, to continue that by providing a lunch where they would also eat together. And that's kind of our two-pronged attack.
Okay, presumably they will escape.
Yeah,
I did one with my family on Friday. We didn't make it out
because it's that kind of program, and you're that kind of people. But I want to make sure if I understand the two prongs you're talking about, because they're both really interesting ideas and they meet different kinds of needs. I really like the idea about posting the stories around because it hits a couple of goals at the same time. It creates this idea that everybody has at some point in their lives felt left out, not included. And those stories they kind of create a sense of a shared humanity and shared vulnerability. And I think that's a healing thing all by itself. But then
hey guys, we have to hire Mary here. She does a better job of articulating it than us.
I would agree. Completely.
Well, I'm only repeating what I heard from you all. So
yeah,
you must have done a good enough job. But then you also have the inspiring stories that you're kind of like that there's help out there, that somebody did something that helped me feel better. And that's encouraging and inspiring. And it also, I think, kind of reinforces in people the desire to be helpful, because who doesn't like to feel helpful? It's an ennobling experience, and ennobling experiences are all too rare, but they're also very wonderful. So I really like that idea, and I can't wait to see more about it. But then the escape room, that's intriguing too, because you're going to have it's fun. It's a detective. Kind of like a detective story, or like it's a puzzle or a game. And so you'll get, I assume, students who wouldn't necessarily have met one another or come from the same kind of friend group. And they'll be thrown together in this room, and then they have to collaborate together. They have to share their skills, their ideas. They might have an analytic group, a marketing group, a creative group, and they'll have to use just the way that you guys did. They have to share their different skills, and they have to get out of the escape room. And so it's a way for the young people to experience one another in different collaborative ways. And I think it's always interesting when those kind of situations arise in life. You can be challenged then to have to let go of stereotypes or assumptions that you might have made about somebody based on other kind of more shallow or superficial kind of assumptions. We all have them. And so that's really intriguing. So people will want it. I mean, it sounds like fun. Well, it wouldn't sound like fun to me, but I'm a little claustrophobic. So just on the surface, but I'm sure that it would sound like a lot of fun and something people will want to do. And then I also like the idea that you were explaining, Tom, that at the end, then after going through, I'm sure it's kind of suspenseful as you're trying to, get out. They socialize afterwards because they will absolutely have something in common to talk about. Absolutely. We got out. So that's really intriguing. And this is a legacy then that you can leave behind to have you're inventing to prevent by creating more understanding, experiences of shared humanity, experiences of collaborating together, and learning some new things about fellow students that you might not otherwise have had the chance to learn. Have I got it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds really, really great. How will this wind up being communicated? What I mean, and I guess this is more for you, Tom, since y'all are graduating. Will the larger Newburyport community have the opportunity to learn about or support this venture?
Yeah, absolutely. We're hoping to make this, I think Landyn mentioned it earlier, we're trying to make this a perennial event where it becomes part of the culture of the school.
Right.
Just quickly, so everyone that hears about the program is very supportive. The kids don't know it yet, but I approached our food services director about lunch, and she was all on board. She's just waiting for that nice formal email that the students are going to send, so they learn a little something about sending emails.
Yeah.
We were talking about reaching out to the community for maybe some prizes for the fastest finishers of the escape room. We were even toying with the idea of some of those panels that we build with those stories and the artwork, possibly, having them displayed throughout town. So
Wonderful.
It becomes more of a community feel. And we've been, I said toying with the idea because sometimes, if you're eating in a nice restaurant, you might not want to be confronted with something that, might kind of sit a little bit, make you feel a little ill at ease. Now that discomfort is going to be good for growth and understanding, but we also have to think of, some of the venues where we might put these up. But that is the plan. We're hoping that it'll be perennial. And again, we've just had so much great support from the newspapers covering us yesterday.
Yeah, that was a great article.
Yeah, I just felt bad. They didn't quote Anna that much. I feel like a big mouth Mary. It was I'm like, quote Anna. Anna was so articulate. Anna was actually invited to present to the Maryland has a government board. It's like the Maryland Board of School Safety, MCSS, and she's actually presenting to this Maryland governmental board about the program because they're interested in adopting it in Maryland schools.
Oh, wonderful. That's impressive. That's really great.
And talk about real world learning. She won't have me for better or worse. It'll just be her. And she's going to be presenting to, this big governmental group in Maryland.
Well, that's exciting and a wonderful opportunity, a great experience to be able to have. Well, I'm so impressed at what you've done. We're almost out of time for our interview, but one final question I have for Izzy and for Landyn is, what have each of you enjoyed the most about the project?
Besides working with me.
Besides working with Dr. Abrams, yes.
Yeah, for me, I feel like it's just a really great way to kind of close out my last year of high school. I feel like there are connections even within the classroom. It's basically what we're aiming to do for our peers has kind of already happened with us. Yeah. I've gotten closer to people that I really didn't think I'd be as close with at the end of this. And I'm really just looking forward to seeing what we can do for the future. I think wonderful. As that was my biggest incentive to join the group, I think that's still what I want out of it most.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that, Landyn. How about you, Izzy?
So I would say I definitely agree with Landyn. Another aspect of it I really like is I feel like I have a better understanding of these kids that I've gone to school with for the past 4 years. And I think especially in this time right now where I know I myself and many others were fully remote last year and then had that separate, that on and off year the year before. I feel like I got very isolated from a lot of these kids that I would, just see in school, but maybe not outside of school. And I think getting to know them in a different light is a very cool thing to be a part of. So I really like that.
like a very cool thing. And I'm really glad you had that opportunity after the,
Mary.
The hard disruption of the pandemic.
And Mary, I have to say, I mean, what a joy to work with these two students in the whole class. I mean, these kids, I'm not in a classroom anymore. This is really one of only 2 classes I teach with my new position. And just to hear them speaking right there, I mean, it just my heart's bursting, with just love for them and for what they're doing. So it's wonderful.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful and very inspiring. And so thank you all both for the work that you've done on the project and the legacy you'll be leaving behind. And thank you for coming to the Visit the Morning Show.
Thank you for having us.
You're taking
Thank
the
you.
time to do it. So thank you. I wish you well. And I really look forward to hearing more about the project. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So thanks for watching, everybody. Please join us next week at 9 on Channel 9 for the morning show. If you missed any part of today's show, it'll be available for viewing on Port Media's YouTube channel playlist for the morning show at ncmhub.org. Just click on the YouTube icon in the upper right-hand corner, click on playlist and scroll down. Each show will also air on WJOP FM 96.3 on Friday at 8 a.m. and the following Tuesday at 4 p.m. and Wednesday at 3 p.m. and will also be available as a podcast on the SoundCloud. Just click on the cloud icon at ncmhub.org and scroll down. That's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much.